But when I was exposed to hip hop, pretty much end of middle school, early high school, something about it, I was like, I love this. And I was like, this is not me. I'm a white kid from Boise, Idaho. I was like, I can't do that.
That is Spencer Boliou. Like he said, a white kid from Boise, Idaho, who had designs on going into so many different occupations before he landed on music. And even that didn't turn out the way he thought it would. More about my special guest in just a moment. This is the Nook Podcast, a place where seasoned believers and those who are still checking out the claims of Jesus can gather, learn, and be encouraged by stories from people who want the life of abundance that Jesus promised. My name is Stephen, and I have the honor of being your host in this corner of podcastery. I make up words. And no matter where you are in your faith, it's good to have you listening. Before I go any further, I want to say thank you to so many of you who reached out in different ways during the last two series of shows, Personal Jesus and Dirty Little Secret. The number of emails, DMs, and text messages was amazing. You might imagine how that much feedback and encouragement from listeners is like rocket fuel for a podcast producer. Thank you, thank you, thank you. If you ever feel so inclined to drop me a line, I've got links in the show notes for the Nook Facebook page, my social media feeds, and email address. I absolutely look forward to hearing from you. With this show, I am beginning what will be a recurring type of episode that I am calling Mixtape. Times when I get the opportunity to introduce you to great musicians making great music. Hopefully something you haven't heard before and might want to add to your Apple Music or Spotify playlist. I first heard of Spencer Boliou about a year ago, and what caught my ear quickly was his ability to take an old hymn of the church and put a new spin on it. That's when I went digging and found that Spencer had one of the most amazing bios I have ever seen. Turns out that he had a love for music going way back into his childhood, but also thought about being a football player, a chemical engineer, or a physician's assistant. And while he's still young and keeping his options open, he has found his voice in lo-fi music. So settle in for this musical conversation with Spencer Boliou. Okay, so with all of this stuff, was the music part of this always kind of playing in the background as you were kind of considering other things as to what might happen later on in life?
That's a great question. I appreciate all the depth that you're asking here. Yeah, so I always, was writing songs when I was little, mostly instrumental. But then, growing up in church, I grew up in a pretty amazing church that I'm actually still at. I do the music there still from
right on.
Various weeks, not every week now, but I started learning guitar and then pretty quickly started leading worship in youth group settings, and doing the thing where you do that and slowly transition to doing it at, the main services at church. And I would kind of do that throughout the years. But I never ever considered music to be something responsible that a responsible person does for a career. So it's always kind of back burner, and I'm I'll do medical because that, there were a lot of medical missionaries that we would support from
nice.
Yeah. There's this medical hospital in Togo, Africa that a lot of churches around my church would support, and we still do. And I was I could be a PA and maybe go to something like that. And so I basically never thought that God, because I didn't actually want to do that. That was, but I thought it was something God would use me in that I had the ability to do, technically speaking.
Sure. Yeah.
And I didn't really want to. And I always thought God's plans for me would be something I originally didn't want to do. And then he like grows my love for it over time.
Oh, I get it. Yeah.
But it would be like selfish if I did something that I like already wanted to do, if you know what I mean.
Gotcha.
So I think that's another reason why it took me so long to even like move towards music. I was like, it's not responsible, and it's also like not the way God is probably going to work in my life. That's the way
Gotcha. Isn't it fun when you assume something like that and then he ultimately goes, oh, really? Watch this.
Yeah, for real.
Okay, so then I'm very curious about this, that you performed, let me back up. You opened for a touring band and performed a hip-hop record that you made as a joke. Was hip hop your thing as far as composing, or I'm just ultimately I want to figure out how you landed in lo-fi, because I love lo-fi and just always curious how musicians get there, that they make that their niche.
Yeah, no, that's true. Really, like growing up as a kid, I did the whole like metalcore metal thing. Like that's what I loved. But when I was exposed to hip hop and like pretty much end of middle school, early high school, something about it, I was like, I love this. And I was like, this is not me. I'm a white kid from Boise, Idaho. Like, I was like, I can't do that, you know, but I love it. And it was like all I listened to for like 7 or 8 years, basically. After that, I listened to so much of it. I wanted to be a Christian rapper in some ways, but also I wanted to be someone who was able to make music that people would appreciate outside of the Christian world as well.
Gotcha.
But I didn't have the voice for it. I was like, you know, still, if I would try to rap, it would be trying to affect some kind of accent, like some street accent that I don't have. like I don't know how to like
that hardcore
rap.
Boise accent that just comes pouring out of you.
Yeah. So that's why it felt like a joke, even though it mentally wasn't. Like I had to play it off as a joke when I opened for that group, because I was like, yeah, I'm not a rapper. Calling yourself a rapper, it just felt so like, you know, like
just not.
yeah. So I didn't do it, and then I performed the song and everything, and then the artist there, like it says in the bio, they were like, hey, they kind of like nicely told me that the other stuff I was doing like wasn't. It was like you could tell they were picking out what to compliment me on, because they didn't want to like address what was wrong with the other music I was making. But then when it came to the hip hop one, they were like, yeah, like not enough people do this like melodic rap that you're doing. And they were like, you really should you should actually do this. I'm like, that's crazy. It's not what I expected to hear from anyone.
Right. Well, then did that little boost of confidence, how instrumental, let's see what I did there, was that in actually pushing you towards figuring out what music and you would do?
It was, but it didn't push me until like a year and a half after that, because I was still finishing college. So I'm like, I'll apply to PA schools after that. That was my senior year. I graduated. Never applied to PA schools, because the thing that I loved in college was working with the campus ministries I was with, like doing, like learning, studying, doing mentoring. Like I loved just being able to, I don't know, be aware of all my friends and what's going on in the group, and just kind of like pray for people and like manage situations. And like I just loved almost the pastoral side of that, even though I'm like a peer, I'm not like their pastor. It was, you know, those types of things that I found God using me in a lot. So after college, I did a year-long internship at my church where I did music in our youth group ministry. Got to the end of that and was like, had no sense that God wanted me to like do full-time ministry. I mean, it went well. It wasn't like it was a disaster. It's just no direction came out of it, basically.
Right.
So I was like, at that point, I was like, God, like, okay, I'll try music. And just stop me if I'm not supposed to be, but I'm just going to do something and try to be sensitive, even though I, you know, also doubt my own sensitivity to the Holy Spirit a lot of the time. But I was like, as best as possible, I'll be sensitive to what you're calling me in. And literally as soon as that happened, as soon as I did that, like my friends connected me to, like up. It was like all this stuff happened that was outside of my control. Like I had a friend who was friends with the DJ for No Big Deal, Derek Minor, like a tour that they were going on. Some of the better known Christian rappers, and so he got us like lunch with them. And at lunch with them, I met this dude, Curtis Hoppy, who's super dope artist, and he was living in Boise at that point. He moved there, and we connected. And he's like, "Oh, bro, I want to help you record," because at that point I still didn't know how to record very well, like with my home setup. So he helped me with that, and then that introduced me to other professionals, and it was like this cascade of people not saying, "Hey, like you've made it," or you're like the most incredible thing ever, but like people that were able to tell me, "We see you as a peer and as someone who can really do this, and like wants you to do it." You know what I mean?
Yeah, they could see the gift in you. They just wanted to help you bring it out. Yeah,
definitely.
That's so cool. So, what were you still doing more of the rap side of things, or I'm just want to make the connection to the stuff that I listen to literally all the time, because while I'm not typically in love with hymns, it's like put a new spin on it the way that you do, and all of a sudden I'm very, very interested in something like, one of your, just about anything in your library. It's like, I'll listen to that long before I listen to the old version of it, or, the original version of it.
Man. Well, first of all, hearing that's amazing, because I don't know, a lot of times you see like numbers on a screen and then it doesn't translate into like the actual experience of people who appreciate it or who use it as a tool in their lives with their talks with God and their time with him and stuff.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know. So yeah, it's just really cool to hear you say that, because it's crazy how many times I feel like no one cares. You know what I mean? Even though they do.
And what a friend we have in Jesus. All our sins and griefs to bear. And what a privilege to carry everything to God in prayer.
I mean, even this last week, I had a really bad attitude, I think, the week before, just thinking about where I am in music and what I need to do to move forward and grow and all this stuff. And like God gave me, even while I had a bad attitude, like he gave me a bunch of specific reminders that like this is impacting individual people to the point where it was like 3 or 4 specific things where I'm like, do I actually like, do I actually care that people are being impacted, or do I care about like the scope of it? Do I care about the depth of it or the scope of it? Because he's showing me that the depth is there, and that makes it worth it now. Like even if the scope doesn't get bigger, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah. I've known that. That's honestly, when I started this podcast 2 years ago, I told God, I said, look, I don't know what this is going to look like. I'm just going to believe that I'm going to reach out to people, have cool conversations about your work in their lives, and you're going to get it to the right ears at the right time. And I don't even check my stats much, because I don't want to get so stuck in, oh no, there was a spike last week and now it's flatlining.
Yeah, I'll never talk about that thing again. No one liked that. And then you're all like,
exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. How did lo-fi become your thing?
Funny story. I wish it was like more spiritual in this way, but like, the good side is I actually like fell in love with the, at that time, Good Christian Music blog, but then what became Amen Worldwide, that was started by like Stephen Bradley and those people, if you know about that kind of Christian indie culture. I found that right when like Montel Fish was coming up and people like Antoine Bradford, Jonathan Ogden. And I love that like soulful side of Christian indie music. Like I was like, I want to do that one day. So that's when I stopped listening to just hip hop. Like I got like into that way more.
Hey, there's other music out there.
Yeah, exactly. Which I loved, and so that's the like marketable side of what I'm saying. The kind of controversial side of what I'm saying is lo-fi. I was like, I like lo-fi, I enjoy it. But what I realized was I'm starting a music career. I'm trying to do this. I'm like, what is the most marketable brand specific thing I can possibly do. And I'm like, well, and that fits me and my voice, because I have a mellow, kind of soulful voice. So I was like, yeah, I'll try lo-fi, and like I'll call it Lo-Fi Hymns, because you know exactly what it is when you hear the name.
Exactly.
It works well. It's marketable that way. And bro, I tried it, and then I ran a few Facebook ads for like literally the first one I did is I Surrender All with my friend Brianna Gray. She goes to church with me. So
that's literally probably one of my top 3 of yours. Just so good.
That's so crazy. Cause like when we made it, I literally released it from Brianna's DistroKid, because I was like, nothing will probably happen with this. It's the first one. So I'll release it from yours. That way you can get your artist page set up on Spotify and all other platforms and everything. And when it released, I like tried running ads for it, like Facebook ads. And when I did that, it was like immediately like the return on it was like super good in terms of not like financially, like they didn't pay for themselves, but it was like people really like they were genuinely clicking on it, going to my Instagram, going to YouTube, going to all these places. Like they loved it. And like that song like relatively blew up in terms of anything I had done before. And it was really cool to see that people really like actually wanted what that was.
And all to Jesus I surrender, all to him I freely give, and I will ever love and trust you in your presence daily live. 'Cause
It just seems like when you get into such a niched genre of music, you all have this knack for finding each other. And then the collaborations start. And that's always so cool for me to see as a fan of the music, when you see 2 people that you've listened to as solo types for a while, and all of a sudden maybe just kick out one track together. And I love that just in the electronic world that we live in, that you guys could be half a world apart and just swap files. But yet the magic in the music can still happen when you guys combine your talents. How much does collaboration mean to you within your growth as a musician?
Yeah, it's huge. Even you saying that is funny, because I feel the exact same way when I see people collab, and it's cool to be able to be part of that, at scale in different ways. But it's huge to actually collaborate, and it's something I want to get into a lot more of.
Lord keep you and bless you. Make his face to shine upon you. Lord turn his face towards you and give you peace.
And then I will quickly confess that I worked in churches for 12 years, and I was in the service programming. I was a video director. I have heard all the typical CCM stuff over and over and over. I could drop names of people that I just don't know if I will ever listen to, because it's been oversaturated for me. So, and I think that's also why I kind of gravitate towards music like yours, that definitely bolsters my faith, but is still a little bit off the beaten path. I can tell you, in fact, that I listen to your music. It helps me worship God, plain and simple. And so much of the focus that I was pushing in the first of the year was just trying to talk to people like yourself, to have conversations like this, to inspire maybe is a little bit strong of a word, but to encourage my listeners. It's like, make worship a priority. It shouldn't just be that 20 minutes before pastor gets up at church on Sunday. This should be a part of our lives, that we should always be looking for opportunities to just stop, take 5 minutes, take 10 minutes, and just worship God, so that, I don't know, that helps me stay in touch. And so you take old hymns and kind of make, this is like ancient and modern, that I love that aspect of things. am I the only one telling you that? And why, for that matter, do you seem to have a knack for taking a song from long before you and I were around and putting such a cool spin on it?
Yeah. I think a lot of it comes down to like I was raised on those songs, so
Oh, nice.
I heard them a lot growing up, and they genuinely mean a lot to me. Like I'll still, get emotional sometimes when I'm like leading those songs at church or someone else is singing them. And also I think, I love what, groups like Maverick City have done, like musically speaking, and kind of how it spread to what Elevation is doing now. I feel like there's so much more creativity than there used to be like happening now, which is amazing. I think a lot of that's because of the merger of gospel. This actually heads where I'm going to. The merging of like gospel with Christian contemporary. Like I think you get almost like the best parts of what the like predominantly white churches have been doing and predominantly black churches.
That's good.
It's coming together in a really dope way, I think. And that's what, where like because a lot of people will like remake hymns and worship songs, and I do like it that way, and some people do it really well, but it'll almost have more of that like folky indie Irish approach.
Yes.
That doesn't always have a lot of like, I don't know, swing and like soul to it. Personally, I was like, if I'm going to be involved in the music world and in especially like redoing hymns and doing things like that, like I want to make sure that I involve a lot of, I guess, soul and those kind of that combination of, even as a white person, but like these influences from other cultures that I would like to claim as my own occasionally, even if it's not.
But every time I try to move on, the demons go a little bit harder. Honestly, they know that I'm lost, They can smell the blood in the water. Never had control of myself, I just went a little bit farther. Promise that I know I need help, but I just need the voice of my Father.
Well, where do you see yourself going? Do you think you will continue with hymns, or where do you see yourself evolving or, expanding what you're building on right now?
Yeah. Thanks for asking that, because that's been something I've been working through for the whole time I do music. But at this point, I have the commitment to do a lo-fi hymn, which it could mean multiple things now, but basically I have the commitment to do a lo-fi hymn a month and a nobody song a month. And basically what that is doing is like the goal of that, which I already see happening. And it's really encouraging to see like the fruit of this being what the objective is. But like doing the nobody song a month, like it allows that to grow. And there's a bunch of rappers out here in Boise that aren't Christians and also online that we know that, aren't local, but they're also in the quote unquote secular industry. And they listen to what we're doing and appreciate it. But then a lot of them end up following me, like my personal account, finding my other music. They find the lo-fi hymns, and I don't know if you've heard the song Blood, but
yes.
That one, that might be my favorite one that I've done.
Brother, if it's in your library, I've heard it, and I hope that doesn't creep you out.
No, that's dope. That's dope. But yeah, like there's this one rapper here who his whole brand is like very dark and overly sexual and demonic. He does it very well though. Like it's a very well branded thing. So I can like compliment him on that, while like him knowing that that's not I don't agree with that aesthetic. Right. But he just like, hit me up after we released that song, and he's like, bro, like I just really mess with this so hard. So he didn't say mess with it. It's like colorful language and everything. Sure. And like people would do that with like that song and some other ones where I just really genuinely express like what my relationship with God looks like and feels like with music, like it's connecting to these people. So I'm like, I really, really, really want to do both at the same time consistently, even though it's not ideal for growing either brand. It's like split in two different ways,
Yep.
but seeing the fruit of it both ways, where you see these people outside the church getting to see snapshots of what it looks like to know God. And
Yes.
then you see people inside the church getting to see that like it's okay to do things and make content that that is made for people outside of the church, and that like it actually could have an impact that way, and like kind of challenge, you know, the people who are like, I would say like a little more like legalistic, but not necessarily out of bad intention, but
Right.
you know, a little more boxed into being like, no, if your music isn't this, then it's not of God. And
Yes.
and then they could discourage people who God is calling to make music or do anything, whether it's a different career field or another type of art, discourage them from, you know, moving that outside of the church. If you know what I mean.
Well, and that brings up the old, you know, are you a Christian artist or an artist who happens to be a Christian?
Yep.
And I know that there are certain people that wrestle with that, but you know, I admire both sides of that.
Me too. Me too.
I see someone like yourself with a music that's got such a cool appeal that somebody would be thinking, man, that's awesome, before they even realize that this is a traditional hymn written, you know, maybe 100 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
That just an opportunity like that to inspire somebody and say, wait a second, this is a little bit different than what I was thinking, that it almost becomes missional for you, that you don't always have to see yourself as, well, if I can only do this in church. I don't think, you know, it's like the church has left the building. And I think we're always going to be a whole lot more effective in reaching people who don't know anything about our Jesus when we can figure out ways to get into their world. That's what I see for you in opportunities with such cool music that I think people will dig before they even get a good dive into the lyrics that you've got in it.
Thank you. And that's one reason why I'm shifting, but only partially with lo-fi hymns to being like, because I started with mostly covers, right? But I mean, I love writing my own music, and that's what I'm trying to do for the most part. So now I'm getting to the point where I'm like, okay, I want to do a lo-fi hymn a month, but every other month it's going to be a worship hymn or a hymn or a worship song or a hymn. And then the other one will be something more like Blood or what I just released, like Sleep Good, which is like R&B, you know, and
that is such a good song.
You like that?
Such a good song.
I'ma sleep good tonight. Yeah. And I know that they wonder if I'm really free sometimes. But I've been under covers in your love, feel the sunlight. I know that I can be lonely and look for another to hold me. But you're in the holies, gentle and lowly. I can go boldly, I'ma sleep good tonight.
I want to land the plane with you, Spencer, on I love the last line in your bio. Art that gives a small glimpse of the highest good, the good that found me when I was far from it. It's obvious that your music means a lot to you. It's obvious that God means a lot to you. What does it mean for you as someone who follows Christ to be able to use music to draw people to Him?
I think like the reason I said it that way was because, you know, a lot of times in music, we talk about like, we're doing big things and we're starting revival and we're doing all this stuff, which like happens, like it happens through music and everything. But I've been like reflecting a lot recently on, like God being drawn to us in our weakness. It's like that concept that I think Dan Ortlund in the book Gentle and Lowly, he talks about it a lot, where Jesus says, like, come to me, like my yoke is easy and my burden is light. It's like, I'm gentle and lowly in heart. And it's like that whole concept that like it says in Ephesians 2, that, you know, we're saved by grace through faith and seated with Him in heavenly places. And it says, so that in the coming ages, He might show the immeasurable riches of His grace in His kindness towards us through Jesus. So just recognizing that my life is about God being able to show His kindness to me. And And in some ways that's such a, like when you know how much you've been forgiven from, and like, you know, like how much God is drawn towards you in your weakness when he shouldn't be, like, and according to our minds.
Come on.
It's like this massive good, like when it's like the greatest good, like there's nothing that could be better than that, when that would like drive me to tears more easily than that. But you can't just put your brain in someone else's brain and have them experience what that is. So that's why I'm like, okay, I want to make music that, it's a small glimpse of that infinite good, but it is a piece of it. Like I can shine a little bit of a light on what that is. And know that even just a little bit of that light, like, is, enough to do something crazy in someone. But also I think having the humility to be like, I have limitations in how much I can reflect Jesus and like reflect what that love is. Like I'm very limited, but what God can do with what that limited reflection is I know huge. And that's one reason I'm thankful for doing this podcast, because it's once again, like a reminder that, it is helpful for people like you and, who is, not like old, but in a generation that is beyond mine.
I'm old.
That's, I guess that kind of sums up what I've been thinking a lot about when it comes to like the honor of getting to do that through music, and really kind of like the motto that I've been trying to have for myself is like making sure that everything I do, whether it's lo-fi hymns or Nobody or the people I talk to at the store or like in any at work, I work as a CNA still at part-time, and which is awesome. With music now, it's part-time.
Sure.
But doing CNA work at a rehab hospital and taking care of people and wiping butts and things like that.
Somebody's got to do it.
Yeah. But getting to recognize it in all those cases, like I want people to know like that God is expressing his kindness towards me in Jesus, and that, it's not something that has anything to do with my skills or talent or anything that God gave me. But I often realize that I think sometimes when God does give you something you're good at, it almost makes it harder for God. Yeah, I mean, he says he uses the foolish things of the world to shame the wise. And so I want my music to actually be labeling myself one of the foolish things of the world that God can use to shame the wise and give them humility and give them the chance to look to him,
I have shared a handful of times on this show how I find most of my guests via social media. And it's always so interesting to reach out to someone who has no idea who I am, and yet will be open to, 1, meeting someone new, and 2, be willing to have a conversation about the main thing we have in common, Jesus. Like so many of my guests, Spencer and I hit it off instantly, and I hope you sensed that. Please check out his music. Those clicks and purchases help a young man who loves God so much and has an opportunity to share the love of Christ using his gifting. Check out the show notes for the important links. Oh, dear listener, your love and support of this show means the world to me. And that's why it's so easy for me to say, thank you so much for listening. And I will catch you here next time in the Nook.
The Nook Podcast is a production of Sozo Digital Media.